Good morning and welcome to Defense Diaries. I'm your host, Bob Mata, and I am joined by my beautiful, brilliant co host, Allie. What's up, girl?
Hey, babe. Hey, all.
So, we're going to dig into the Brian Thompson assassination slash Luigi Mangione case again. Yesterday, had some breaking news. I tweeted about it. We had already been live. I don't know. Did we go live twice yesterday? I can't remember. It's all blurring together.
I was in
Oh,
court, so
oh yeah, that's right. You were in court. Well, you were there for the morning thing. That's when I I yelled at you or whatever. I wasn't really yelling at you. I shamed you for not having a clip up. Um
shamed me.
Shamed you. So here's what we're gonna do for those who may be unfamiliar with the case. I'm going to go through a quick timeline of what we're talking about with this case. Ultimately, where we're going to end up is we're going to watch some of the presser from yesterday with Alvin Bragg, who is the district attorney of Manhattan, wherein they announced the 11 charge indictment. And really, and we have a window because Allie has to do family things. She's got to bring my dad somewhere. So we're gonna try to keep this tight. We keep it tight,
Either
allegedly.
way, I'll leave at noon, and you'll see how much longer Bob goes.
Yeah. I look, this is a conversation I have to have with you though. So, but ultimately where we want to end up is that when we get to the indictment and we read through the charges, they land on a first degree murder charge. And there's Ali and I had mentioned it prior that they were going to,
That
if
they
they were going to
had
do
to.
that, right, they're going to rely on this concept of terrorism. I want to get into the discussion with you, babe, about whether or not that is an overcharge, whether or not that's a reach. So what we'd like to do, we'll pull up the actual statute, the murder statute, and we'll also pull up the definition of terrorism in terms of how it applies to that statute, and we'll try to figure it out. We'll try to figure it out if that is going to hold water as this thing progresses. But all right, so this is kind of the brief overview. So on December 4th at about 5:30 in the morning, the person that police believe was the gunman left a hostel that he had been staying in for a few days, which was called the HI New York City hostel, and that's near like West 103rd Street and Amsterdam Avenue. Cops speculate that the man rode a bicycle to Midtown because it took him only 10 minutes to get from the hostel on the Upper West Side to West 54th Street, which is where the shooting occurred. So then moved to 5:41 a.m. The man is believed to have arrived at the New York Hilton Midtown Hotel, and that's where United Healthcare was holding its annual Investors Day gathering. So the police at that point say that the shooter, the alleged shooter, or the shooter that they think is Luigi Mangione, walked back and forth on West 54th before entering a Starbucks near West 56th Street and the Avenue of the Americas. So that is one of the places where we see one of the shots, one of the pictures, one of the video screen grabs that law enforcement put out. Now that one shows a gray backpack and a black zip up, or it could be a three quarter zip up, and he's got a black mask in that particular picture. So then fast forward to 6:20 a.m. Surveillance footage provided by Stage Star Delhi captures a man believed to be the gunman walking westward on West 55th between the Avenue of the Americas and 7th Avenue. All right, and that's the most kind of from that photo and that little like that 13-second clip. It you don't see his face. Really, the identifying item in that particular photo is, of course, that gray backpack. So then fast forward to about 6:30 a.m. Surveillance footage obtained by the New York Times shows the suspect walking in the area uh, of the shooting around 15 minutes beforehand. So he appears to be making a phone call as he walks on the sidewalk, approximately 175 feet from where the shooting occurred. So 6:44 a.m. That is when the shooting occurs. So at 6:44 a.m., Mr. Thompson is seen walking on West 54th towards the entrance of the Hilton. At about 6:45 a.m., the gunman approaches Mr. Thompson from behind and fires several shots. The gunman, at some point during the commission of the crime, stops and he's messing around with the gun, which appears to have jammed. He then shoots again as he walks towards Mr. Thompson, who is now laying on the ground as he's collapsed. At that point, the gunman swings around and starts jogging across the street. So there was a witness photo that captured. So as this thing was progressing throughout the course of that day, if you guys remember, it was like they were dropping breadcrumbs because obviously law enforcement was out there just scouring every business, scouring all of their video surveillance videos, trying to catch an image of this guy. And they were successful in some I think are questionable. I think I feel very comfortable about anything that has the dude with the gray backpack. When we lose the gray backpack and we have different color jackets, I'm not so sure that's the same person. So, but you know, I don't even know. I feel pretty comfortable in saying that if this indeed does go to trial, that those particular photographs will not be put into evidence by the state, but most likely will be put in to evidence by the defense. Because I think there were photos that were put out that are not him. But that's just my opinion. That and a nickel will get you nothing. So they catch him jogging through this pedestrian passageway onto West 55th. Cops later found a cell phone in that same passageway. Whether or not that was the shooters, we don't know at this point. They then believe that the suspect got on a bicycle, an e-bike, and rode north. They show a photograph of a person on the bicycle. He once again has a distinctive gray backpack. So he heads down, turns onto the Avenue of the Americas from West 55th Street. 6:48, the cops arrive at the scene. They find Mr. Thompson lying on the sidewalk in front of the Hilton. At that same time, the suspect is spotted riding into Central Park on Center Drive. Now, on that same day, if you'll recall, or if you're fresh to the case, law enforcement claims that they found a backpack that they believe that the man ditched in Central Park while he's fleeing. Now, I don't want to jump ahead, but when Luigi Mangione is captured, he has a backpack. Now, the one thing that I don't know is that same gray backpack. I don't know that I've read a description of the backpack that they found. Heard about all the stuff in it. Haven't heard about that backpack, whether or not it's the same gray one. You can let me know in chat if you guys have seen a report of that. So you got 6:56 a.m. Mr. Kenny says that the suspected shooter then exited the park at 77th Street, still on the bicycle. 6:58. There is surveillance footage showing the suspect near 86th Street and Columbus Avenue. At around 7 a.m., the suspect is still on 86th Street, but no longer on the bicycle. 7:04, gets into a cab at 86th Street and Amsterdam Avenue, heading north. 7:30, he arrives at a bus station near 178th Street and Broadway that uses interstate buses. I'm assuming Greyhound-like buses. They have video surveillance showing him going in but not coming out. That's when law enforcement thinks that he may have left New York. So now other things come out that they end up believing that he took a train I haven't seen anything confirming that, but it sounds like they now believe that he dipped out and took a train. So for the next 5 days, the whole country, the whole world really is watching this thing kind of like in disbelief how this guy hasn't been captured yet. Right? We're all kind of like, what is going on? Like in this modern world that we live in, we're all on the grid all the time. You can't like take a step without being caught on video somewhere. How has this guy evaded law enforcement? Like he must really be deep underground. Well, turns out not so much. Turns out on December 9th, a gentleman is observed in a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania, after a group of older retirees and an employee of McDonald's all recognize a person they think might be the same person that they've been seeing photographs of all over the media and social media. So they call Altoona PD. They're like, yo, I think this dude might be here. And at that point, they come in, they approach him. He gives no resistance. He complies. They take him into custody. They come to find out that that man's name is Luigi Mangione. And they bring him in for some initial questioning. Now, when he's questioned by the police, the man furnishes a fake New Jersey identification, which it is alleged to match the same one that was used by the suspected gunman when that person checked into a hostel on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. Additionally, they find that Luigi was in possession of a firearm and a silencer similar to the ones that were used in the New York killing. He also had with him a 262-word written manifesto, which was condemning the healthcare industry for putting profits over patients. He also was carrying a spiral notebook, which has some additional information in it. So at that point, we kind of get to where he's in custody. He's charged in Pennsylvania with various crimes not related to the shooting, but instead because he provided false ID and he had a weapon and a silencer without being licensed in Pennsylvania. And I don't believe that they have, if they do have conceal and carry, he certainly didn't have a license there. I'll be honest, I haven't even looked at the Pennsylvania charges because believe me when I tell you this, as soon as he gets extradited to New York, Pennsylvania is going to drop those charges. I can almost guarantee it. As close as I can guarantee anything in the law, Pennsylvania is going to not worry about those charges. There's bigger fish to fry.
So
Go ahead, babe.
So I just want to add that, and I don't know if this was something you planned on touching on, that his family had reported him missing sometime in November, and the feds interviewed his mother before he was identified, and his mother. There hasn't been much reported, but I did hear on CNN that law enforcement told him that the mother did not identify him in the photo, but said that this was something she could see him doing. I haven't been able to find anything more about that, but I did find it interesting that they apparently just cross-checking missing persons and seeing what he looked like, decided that this was something they wanted to follow up on, and then that did help them broaden their, investigation. But as Bob said, ultimately it was the people in McDonald's that spotted him. And
Yeah, and interestingly, story that has surfaced in the past couple of days is that apparently, allegedly, Luigi's mother called in the feds the day before he was ended up being picked up, saying that she said that her son could potentially be the person in those pictures. Did you hear that?
Oh, well, what I heard is all just what I said, and I heard it from the feds that they went to her, showed her the pictures. She didn't identify him in the pictures, but said this was something she could see her son doing.
Oh, wow. That's a
Yeah.
very different story than what I've heard.
I mean, I literally just said that before you said the thing about the mother.
Oh, you did? Oh, sorry.
Yes.
I
I was
was
like,
spaced.
what is happening right now?
So here's what happens, and it happens with both of us.
I
I'll
get it.
talk and you do other things. I was doing other things. I was
It
trying to
was
pull up.
it
I
was the only thing
actually,
I said though.
well, I was already deep in because
Deep
I
in,
wanna I
deep in.
wanna read the manifesto in case people haven't heard it. Now, this is what we believe to be the manifesto. This thing leaked out, I want to say Wednesday or Thursday last week. I, of course, found it on Twitter. It was an independent journalist who I gave cred to because I don't know how he got it. It certainly it certainly reads as if it's the actual, because there were two manifestos that were floating around. One of them, yeah, for both of us. So, right, DB?
Yeah,
Like
you
you
got
see
people
Allie
saying
do it
how the
too, right?
tide turned, how that's usually my move. That just
Yeah.
saying that they could see it. They could see you go blank
Who, me?
while you were delving in right
Well,
then
you
and
can't
there.
really even see my eyes. People typically think I'm sleeping. Wait, Bob fell asleep. It used to be when I was no, I did
Wait,
not.
what?
That's amazing.
I don't know how I feel about that.
That is amazing. DB, send me that or tag me on Twitter so I did not, I missed
I don't
that.
know if you can see it if you're blocked, can you?
The blocking doesn't work anymore. It's like I can't comment, but I can see all her posts.
Oh, Elon
Yeah.
was like, "Aha." Uh,
Gotcha. All right. So, all right,
okay.
I gotta keep this thing moving. So
I was just gonna
I
say
don't
it
want
is
to belabor the point.
11:23.
I know, I know. All right. So if y'all haven't heard it, this is it. I like Cameron and I, she was my camera person. I did a live and like an idiot, I forgot to plug in my mic. So the quality of that sucked. But you know, I mean, it is what it is with me. You know, it's like
I
you get
forgot
what you
to
get.
plug in my mic.
I did. It's like, and I told her, I'm like, we have to plug in the mic. And then we both forgot to plug in the mic, but I blame myself. It's like,
Well,
you
you
know,
can only blame yourself.
well, I mean, she was my camera person.
I know, but
All right. All right. So this is it. Allegedly. To the feds. I'll keep this short because I do respect what you do for our country. To save you a lengthy investigation, I state plainly that I wasn't working with anyone. This was fairly trivial. Some elementary social engineering, basic CAD, CAD, a lot of patience. The spiral notebook, if present, which I just find so strange, has some straggling notes and to-do lists that illuminate the gist of this. My tech is pretty locked down because I work in engineering, so probably not much info there. I do apologize for any strife or trauma, but it had to be done. To be done. Frankly, these parasites simply had it coming. A reminder, the US has the number one most expensive healthcare system in the world, yet we rank roughly number 42 in life expectancy. United is the undecipherable largest company in the United States by market cap, behind only Apple, Google, and Walmart. It has grown and grown, but has our life expectancy? No. The reality is these indecipherable have simply gotten too powerful, and they continue to abuse our country for immense profit because the American public has allowed them to get away with it. Obviously, the problem is more complex, but I do not have the space. And frankly, I do not pretend to be the most qualified person to lay out the full argument. But many have illuminated the corruption and greed, e.g., Rosenthal, more decades ago, and the problems simply remain. It is not an issue of awareness at this point, but clearly power games at play. Evidently, I am the first to face it with such brutal honesty. End manifesto.
That technically does qualify as a manifesto. And I wonder how he can take on something so brutally, I guess, while he's acknowledging that he's not the best one to speak on the topic, but others have. Like, that's all I could say. I mean, I'm not the best one to speak on this. Others have kind of said it, but I'm going to do this brutal honesty thing.
Yeah, well, he had to face it with brutal honesty.
Yeah, whatever.
So, I mean, this is kind of where I'm at with it. And when this story broke and they made the arrest, and we were kind of pontificating, oh, this is a little bit like this has a little bit of a Robin Hood flavor to it. I mean, this guy, and then obviously it comes out that this kid comes from wealth, and he's got
Has every opportunity in the world, traveled the planet, been all over,
lives in
everywhere.
Hawaii, like this, so like kind of that fell on deaf ears as far as I'm concerned with respect to he's certainly not Robin Hood. And I think that both you and I agree, while we absolutely unequivocally believe in what he's saying with regards to our healthcare system in this country, it is for shit. No doubt about it. It is a nightmare to deal with. And that goes for people with money and without. Obviously, folks that don't have money, it's 1,000 times the nightmare. But even those with money, it's a for-profit system. And when you introduce greed into a circumstance, it's always going to make things shitty. Always.
All right, well,
So
let's pull up that indictment, and then I've got the law ready, and I agree, he's a punk.
he a punk. He a punk. But he deserves a fair trial.
Of course.
That is the other part of this. All right, so let's go.
I've saved it under Defense Diaries, Luigi, and I also emailed it to you.
I know, I'm pulling it up. Oh, I got
And
it.
I emailed you both statutes.
So you want to do the indictment first, right?
Well, I don't know if you wanna, I guess, do
Well, I
the
was thinking
indictment.
here. Why
Do the
don't
statute
we?
first.
Huh?
You wanna do the statute first?
No. I was gonna do some of the presser,
All right.
but we'll whip through it because it's long. Because that kind of leads into the indictment, right? Like this is basic. What's up, Steve-O?
Don't forget that Darren is converting these.
Oh, right. Well, Darren can do a little editing. I'll kill him. All right, let's see.
Hi, Darren. We love you. Thank you.
I'm allowed to say things.
I know. I'm just
I don't have
saying.
to walk around on eggshells all the time. Sorry. I'm not doing it. I love you, Darren, though. I mean, it's impossible to go through a YouTube live without kind of off the cuff commenting. It's not feasible.
All right. We're going to stay quiet through the presser.
Well, I'll pause it if need be. All right. So we got the presser. All right, let's see. Okay. I'm going to put the captions on. So I'll do it at 1.25. Yeah, babe? Does that seem right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Oh, good. Good. This is what I wanted to see.
Who's that?
That is Alvin Bragg.
No, I meant the comment.
Oh.
Good afternoon. I'm Alvin Bragg, Manhattan District Attorney. Honored and privileged to be joined by Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch. First and foremost, I want to extend my deepest condolences to Mr. Thompson's loved ones, colleagues. His family deserves our respect as they continue to grieve. Our work will never be able to undo the fact that a life was lost. We are here to announce that Luigi Mangione, the defendant, is charged with 1 count of murder in the first degree and 2 counts of murder in the second degree, including 1 count of murder in the second degree as an act of terrorism for the brazen, targeted, and premeditated shooting of Brian Thompson, who, as you know, was the CEO of United Healthcare. This case was made possible by the collaborative efforts of the phenomenal public servants you see before you today, and so many others who are not here. I'm honored to lead the Manhattan District Attorney's Office and privileged to serve alongside Assistant District Attorneys Joel Seidman, Kristen Bailey, and Zachary Kaplan, who were working. And I want to acknowledge Moran in particular, who heads that to work. Almost.
Hey, we're going to skip past all the
out doing
back
courageous
padding
frontline
and
work.
all that stuff.
It wasn't just those of us here in New York. I want to acknowledge the great work of our partners in Altoona, the Altoona Police Department, our great plan and the safety of local residents and tourists alike, commuters and business people just starting out on their day. Let me say a bit more about the charges. They include 1 count of murder in the first degree as a killing in furtherance of terrorism, 2 counts of murder in the second degree, 1 charging that the killing was done as an act of terrorism, and the second pertaining to the fact that the killing was intentional. The maximum penalty possible for murder in the first degree and murder in the second degree as an act of terrorism is life without parole. The maximum penalty for murder in the second degree is 25 years to life. There are additional counts as well. A number of criminal possession of weapon charges, 2 counts in the second degree, 4 counts in the third degree, 1 count in the fourth degree, and a count of criminal possession of a forged instrument in the second degree. Let me tell you a bit about the facts. On November 24th, we allege that the defendant arrived in New York City to murder Brian Thompson. After the defendant arrived in New York City on a bus at Port Authority, he checked into the hostel on the Upper West Side using the name Mark Rosario with a fake New Jersey ID. On the morning of December 4th, the defendant left the hostel, just after 5:30 a.m. and traveled to Midtown. For nearly an hour, we allege the defendant waited in the area near the Hilton Hotel, waiting for Mr. Thompson to appear. From 6:38 a.m. to 6:44 a.m., the defendant stood across from the entrance of the hotel on West 54th Street. When he saw Mr. Thompson, he crossed the street and approached him from behind. We allege he then took out a 9mm 3D printed ghost gun, equipped with a 3D printed suppressor, and shot him once in the back and once in the leg. The defendant then fled northeast on 54th Street and took an e-bike uptown before getting into a taxi that took him to West 178th Street and Amsterdam Avenue. On December 9th, the defendant was spotted at a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania. The local police were notified. He was arrested, and he was found with a 9mm handgun, a suppressor, 2 ammunition magazines, and the same fake New Jersey ID he used at the hostel. I want to say a word about ghost guns. These weapons are increasingly proliferating throughout New York City and the entire country. Involving technology will only make this problem worse. Last year, over 80 ghost guns and ghost gun parts were recovered in Manhattan alone. The NYPD and the Manhattan DA's office have been leading in the interdiction of these ghost guns. And one thing I want to make clear, they're unserialized, they can be printed out, but as this case tragically makes clear, they are just as deadly as traditional firearms. This will remain a priority for us here in Manhattan. Finally, I know there have been questions about the extradition process. The latest that I can offer you is that the defendant is currently scheduled to appear in court in Pennsylvania on Thursday morning, first for a preliminary hearing on his Pennsylvania charges. Immediately to follow before the hearing, will send to the governor of the state of New York the paperwork would be necessary if he does not waive during that hearing. I now want to turn over to our great commissioner, and when I do so, I wanted to thank her for her partnership, not only on this matter, but on all we do every day together. Thank you.
We don't need her.
I agree.
Good afternoon, everyone.
I agree. We have enough. All right. Let's pull up the.
I find it strange that they're not going to send the paperwork unless he does not waive extradition. His lawyer might be complaining that they're not getting the necessary paperwork. So what do you want to do? Start with the. Sorry.
So let's just whip. Did I put that up or did you?
I did not.
Okay. Let's just pound through this. The indictment. Why don't you go ahead and read it for us, babe? Can you see it?
I don't even have my glasses on.
Oh,
The grand jury of New York, by this indictment, accuses the defendant of the crime of first-degree murder in violation of penal code, and it specifies the penal code, committed as followed.
You said
as
penal.
follows.
Oh.
The defendant in the county of New York on or about December 4th, 2024, being more than 18 years old, and that is a statutory requirement, at the time of the commission of the crime, with the intent to cause death of another, caused death of Brian Thompson, and said person was killed in furtherance of an act of terrorism.
Aw. Do you need me to come down and pet your back?
I'm telling you, there's something in this basement that makes me cough every time I'm down here.
I think it's every time you start reading and it's your vaping. That's what I'm gonna guess.
I don't think so.
I want you to quit vaping. I think it's bad for you.
Do you think?
Yeah.
Okay. And said person was killed in furtherance of an act of terrorism involving a violent act and acts dangerous to human life that were in violation of the criminal laws of this state and were intended to intimidate or coerce a civilian population, influence the politics of a unit of government by intimidation or coercion, and affect the conduct of a unit of government by murder, assassination, or kidnapping. So I think that we should start with that because and go to the statute and then pop back. That's what I think we should do. So we can
Okay.
look. So
Do you want me
all of
to
those are buzzwords. So start with the first degree,
Okay.
even though what's really relevant is the definition of terrorism. But
Okay.
and he's charged under statute A9, I think 8 or 9, X I or I. Want
Okay.
me to pull?
No, I got it.
Okay.
I got it. Pulling it up presently. All right. Let me blow it up a little bit.
And then scroll down. So I'll read the first part. With the intent to cause death of another person, he causes the death of such person or of a third person and either, and now we're going to go down to XIII.
Okay, so
Yeah.
III, right?
Yep.
It's also known as Roman numeral 13.
Okay, right. 13. I said 9, but I was thinking, I don't know. So the victim was killed in furtherance of an act of terrorism as defined by paragraph B of subdivision 490.05 of this chapter. So now that's where you
Wait,
go.
just finish it, say the and.
And the defendant was more than 18 years old at the time of the commission of the crime, which
All
they
right,
alleged as well. So now we go over to
and if you guys have watched our channel for any period of time or listened to our podcast, you know that the state must prove each and every element of that statute that Allison just read to you. So that and now that's obviously not going to be a problem because he was clearly 18 at the time. All right. So now we're going to switch over to, oh, damn it. I thought if I would have been logged into Westlaw, it would have
let
popped
you
me.
click into it. Yeah.
Dang, that would have been so fancy. Dang, that would have been fancy. All right. It's not quite as fancy now, though, but I'll get there.
So, and this, if you heard our live the other day on this, Bob and I were talking about why they didn't charge him with first degree murder. We pulled up this statute and we talked about the fact that this was the only possibility under their statute that it could possibly fit in. But looking at the definition of terrorism, that raised a question for me. And I'll point out to you guys why now.
Okay, so here are the definitions. And oftentimes when reading a statute, and I know that many of you in our chat enjoy doing that, you're going to always want to check out the definitions contained within that statute itself. They'll have a carved out area for definitions just like this because it's very instructive because you need to know how they're applying terms within that statute.
So
All right.
now we're going to go to B,
Yeah.
act of terrorism under B.
Okay.
All right.
Can you read it? Is it big enough?
Yeah. So for the purposes of subparagraph 13 of what we just read of this chapter means activities that involve a violent act or danger or acts dangerous to human life that are in violation of the criminal laws of this state and are intended to, and then we've got that. They chose the ones: intimidate and coerce a civilian population, that'd be the healthcare population; influence a policy of a unit of government, which I guess could be the government to,
It's
live
arguable. It's
right,
arguable, at
right,
least.
but it's an or, so you can just stop at one, but when you go down, um, continue down, 'cause I
Well, just read the third one. Might as well.
affects the conduct of a unit of government by murder, assassination, or kidnapping. Same language as was um, in the in the other statute. So now 3, okay? So this is where I don't know. It says specific offenses for the purpose of this article, a Class A felony offense other than an offense defined. So maybe this part doesn't apply. Maybe 3 doesn't apply. Go back up to the top. Let me see.
Well, I definitely want to read 2 because these are things that they're going to use in terms of in furtherance of the fact that it was an act of terrorism specifically. So material support or resources means currency or other financial securities, financial services, lodging, training, safe houses, false documentation or identification, communications equipment, facilities, weapons, lethal substances, explosives, personnel, transportation, and other physical assets, except medicine or religious materials. Now, obviously, when you read through that statute, you know that they're talking about crews like, the ones that are responsible for some of the huger acts of terrorism. So obviously it'll be a stretch, I think, to be able to apply kind of what the legislative intent of that particular definition was to Luigi, but I think they're going to try. All right, where do you want me to go?
Hold on, I'm trying to see something about how this statute. Whoops. Okay, so for B. All right. So oh, wait, hold on. Let me go forward. I think it's not an issue now that I'm looking at it. I think that the specific offense only applies under A. So, yep. So B, for the purposes of this, you don't need to worry about the material support or resources or specific offense, because B doesn't involve um an act constituting a specific offense.
Did you go to paragraph A of subdivision 1 of section 125.27? Is that what you're looking at?
No, I'm looking at the same thing you're looking at.
Okay.
So, because where I was thinking, I'm not sure it falls under one of these specific offenses. I thought that the act of terrorism needed to be in support of one of these specific offenses, and we talked about it before. One of them is like, um, was like identity theft or unlawful possession of personal identification. But under this statute, it would have to be a crime in furtherance of that offense. And that's where I was like, that might be a stretch. So when they go under B, looking at this again, I don't think we need to worry about the specific offense part of the statute. So I do think that this falls into intimidation or coercion of a civilian population. It's exactly what it was intended for. And I'll tell you, I think the reason that they did this. Now, if you recall, I said that I thought the reason they didn't do this before was because they wanted to stay away from um the the whole this was a message the to the healthcare industry and the insurance industry, and they wanted to not have to deal with that aspect of it. Now I think that they're doing it because they want to give him a reason to plead out. You
Right.
can go to prison for 25 years with the possibility of parole, or you can never get out ever.
Right. 100%. I mean, but that's a classic overcharge move, right? I mean, so
I just don't know that it really is. I mean, it is.
I find it to be able, so that this is why let's talk it out. Convince me No,
Well,
I
their
don't.
definition of terrorism for New York State is to intimidate or coerce a civilian population. Do we not think that that was what this was exactly intended to do?
I don't.
You don't think it was to influence policy?
It doesn't say influence. It says
That's the
intimidate or
second.
coerce.
The second,
But you're
influence
skipping
policy.
the important part of a unit of government.
I know, but a unit of government does put protocols and oversee
Okay,
healthcare
United
insurance.
Healthcare is very much a privatized
I know,
corporation
but can't the government
for
put
profit.
policies in effect that control how private insurance companies operate?
You better bulk up that argument. Like, I
I
don't
think it
think.
was to intimidate or coerce a civilian population.
Okay, how?
The healthcare industry, the healthcare insurance industry, like, if you keep this you don't think it was to intimidate or coerce them?
But it doesn't. They're not a civilian population.
They are. They're a population of people that are involved in the healthcare insurance industry. They're
Stretch,
civilians.
stretch, big stretch. So
Well,
I just think they're going to have a very, very hard time pounding this seemingly square peg into a round hole. Like I get why they charged under it. I think you're exactly right. I think that it is absolutely to force his hand to take a plea, a much sexier plea that ends with him not in prison for life.
possibility of life, but
Possibility, but there's also possibility he can get
get
out
out.
depending on.
And also, if the jurors are struggling, it's like, "All right, fine, we'll go with the lower one." Like, if there's
Well, I mean, they've included that, so
I
they
know, but that's what
have.
I'm saying. Sometimes they put those higher charges in because the more charges there are, if there are people who get on the jury and wanna fight to, like, for whatever, their own reasons that they wanna find this guy not guilty, that's a bargaining chip. You're like, "All right, fine. You can find him not guilty on 1, and let's find him guilty on count 2." The,
Yeah, well, that's true. However, I think on the flip side of it, devil's advocating, overcharging, as you saw in Karen Reed, when they're trying to nail her with second-degree murder. In that case, that was fucking obscene. That's like
right,
that
but
was
it ended up with a hung jury,
exactly, but
or did it?
we're talking from the perspective. Yeah, it was, well, right. Yeah, it was hung, or maybe not. I don't know. As far as that charge, I mean, I guess we'll never know at this point unless they have some luck with the Supreme Court. But um, you know, like, remember, I'm talking about from the perspective of a prosecutor's office. Had they not charged that, I tend to think that they probably would have gotten a conviction in that trial, because the defense was so dug in on their conspiracy theory, which I've said it once, I've said it a million times. I have no idea what happened. I'm not saying that John O'Keefe wasn't beaten in that house and dragged out. That could have absolutely have happened. But for the purposes of trying to convince 12 people on a jury, I'm sorry, you are never convincing 12 people of a conspiracy of that nature. I'm sorry, you're just not doing it. Like, you can argue with me all you want, but the proof is in the pudding. Like, you're
Even though
just.
they're not supposed to have to prove it,
And
but
I felt the same exact way about Richard Allen's defense. There was, under no circumstances were they ever convincing 12 people that a brooding, marauding band of Viking Odinists killed those two girls.
true or not true.
True or not true? Like, you're just never convincing people, because it's too much to ask. It's too hard for people to go all that way. So, the point being here is I think that we have this situation where I think they're doing exactly what you're suggesting. I think that they threw the one out there, the felony one, the murder one out there, for the purposes of trying to entice him to take the deal. It's the same way that on a death penalty eligible case in states that have the death penalty, that's always the carrot. The carrot is, say, okay, well, we can avoid the trial altogether. You can spare the victims' families, the trial. You can spare your own family the trial, all that comes with that. and we'll take the death penalty off the table. Just take life without the possibility, and we'll
that
call
brings
it a
us
day.
right back to Amanda's question and back to reading the indictment as on second degree. And you've got me for 9 more minutes.
9 minutes. 9 minutes. All right, let me pull it up.
So sorry, guys. I just wanted to touch on the first right after we read it, and then we go back through the indictment.
All right, let me see. I have to find it. I lost it. Okay, hold on. Let me see here. Okay, I found it. All right. Okay. I feel like I need like 6 screens. That's what I feel like I need. This 2 screens is not enough.
I didn't send you the second degree murder.
It's in here. It's a 6-page indictment. It's got all the charges.
No, I mean that
Oh,
statute.
the statute.
I don't know if you'll need it because they'll cite to it.
Okay.
But in case it is, I'll pull it up in case
Okay.
something pops up.
All right. Let's see. Let me blow it up. Okay, so we have you went through the first already. Oh, wait, I'm gonna switch my view back. Okay, so why don't you read through second degree?
All right. So the grand jury in this indictment further accuses the defendant of the crime of murder in the second degree as a crime of terrorism in violation of Penal Code 125.25.1 and 490.25. And I'm just going to pull up 25.25.1. I guess which is with the intent to cause the death of another, he causes the death of such person or third person, except that in any prosecution under this subdivision, it is an affirmative defense that, and we don't need to get into those, but, and I'm assuming that 490.25 is the same statute that we just read, right?
That was 490.05.
Oh, so it's a different definition.
Yeah.
All right. Well, why don't you read this while I pull up that so you have it?
Okay. Where were you? Had you finished count 2?
No.
Okay. So the defendant in the county of New York on or about December 4, 2024, with the intent to intimidate or coerce a civilian population, influence the policy of a unit of government by intimidation or coercion, and affect the conduct of a unit of government by murder, assassination, or kidnapping, committed the specified offense of murder in the second degree, in that the defendant with intent to the death of another person caused the death of Brian Thompson. Third count in the grand jury aforesaid by this indictment further accuses the defendant of the crime of murder in the second degree in violation of penal law, section 125.251, committed as follows. The defendant in the county of New York on or about December 4, 2024, with intent to cause the death of another person, caused the death of Brian Thompson. Fourth count. So there you can see they plucked out the terrorism talk, okay, in that third count. Fourth count. And the reason they do that is in the event that the jury agrees with me that they've gone too far afoot, that they're not going to be able to prove that this had anything to do with coercing a civilian population, and that under no circumstances can we lump, no matter how many handshake deals and how much money is slipped under the table between the United States government and United Healthcare, I don't think you're going to be able to make the argument and win that they were a government entity. But that's just me. That's just me. But I can guarantee you, and as we know, if you don't know, Luigi Mangione did hire New York counsel, some high-powered attorneys.
So here's, because I got to go soon. So here's where it gets complicated. So now this statute under the second degree and a crime of terrorism, you have to, it does include a specific offense. So
You
now,
pull it up? Is it easier to pull it up?
well, you go back to the 290.05 where I said, don't worry about specific offense. So if you go back to, and you might have to do some of this while I'm gone, but this is where I find that I'm not sure it works, because it says, for the purpose of this article, means,
Babe, do you need to clear your throat? Just turn the mic off and get your throat clear. Do you want me to run you down a little glass of
no, I
water?
do have some water.
Oh. Because I very much can relate to that froggy thing. It does seem to happen more when you're
In the
down
basement.
there. Yeah.
It
Can't
could be
deny that.
dusty down here. It could be my allergies, but it seems kind of quick, and it doesn't make my eyes itch or anything. So in
All right.
any event,
Do you want me to pull it back up?
sure.
490.05.
While you're doing it, I'll read it. So, for the purposes of this article, means an act or acts constituting a specific offense as defined in subdivision 3, and we're going to get to it, for which a person may be convicted, blah 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 blah. But then it says, which contains all of the essential elements of a specific offense that is intended to, and now let's just use intimidate or coerce a civilian population, any of them, right? So to me, here, the act intended to intimidate is the murder itself, right? But if you scroll down to 3, where it defines specific offenses,
I'm here.
all right.
What's
So
up?
you've got manslaughter in the second degree. So they could use manslaughter in the second degree as the offense, although I mean, I'm sure it probably might have all the elements of what I am sure is that at some point the New York lawyers are going to ask them to be more specific in the indictment as to which specific offense they are claiming he committed here under this definition. But let's say that the manslaughter in the second isn't it. What?
Through like a bill of particulars? Like, because I mean, that's the only one that fits. Like,
Well,
manslaughter in the second is the only one that fits.
right,
based on
because
what I'm looking
where I
at.
was saying here is, like, he did have unlawful possession of personal identification. That he did have, but he did not have that in furtherance of intimidating somebody.
Well,
But
I mean, you could
I guess so,
argue,
yeah.
right? You could argue that that was all part of the grander scheme of things, and that without him being able to but that I think that the counter argument for the defense is that that was for evasion purposes, not in furtherance of.
Right, and I'm sorry, I added the words "in furtherance of." It just says uh, that that he committed an offense which contains all the essential elements of a specified offense that is intended to intimidate. So that offense, the offense of having the you know, no personal identification, wasn't intended to, and that this is going to come down to just how this statute has been defined by the courts, and if need be, when it gets closer, we'll do some more research, because they may say things like, well, a specific offense, if it's in furtherance of, that does qualify under the statute, something like that. So it's how the courts have dealt with this specific offense, and I haven't had enough opportunity to research that issue, decides whether this second count, trying to also fall under terrorism, which would also take him into life instead of the 25 years, whether that fits here.
Right. Yeah, I
So
mean, it'll be interesting, and at the end of the day, depending on what defense they decide to employ, if in fact this thing is going to move towards trial.
thanks, Mandy. I'm out.
All right,
Bye, guys.
I love you.
Love you too.
If he decides, through his attorneys, decides to employ a mental defect defense, it changes the scope of what the state has to prove. So it becomes a very different trial. Now, and I see Katie Burr's comment here. I don't know if he is a man of the people. You don't know him from a hole in the ground, Katie. He's, I don't know. But I agree with you here. I think that first degree murder charge based on the terrorism portion of it is a big stretch. I really do. I really do. And I think ultimately what's going to pan out here, and for him to kind of dip on his entire family and kind of vanish, I'm going to hazard a guess that he had some mental illness problems going on. That's where I think this thing's going to land. I really do. And if he had them, I mean, just a lot of the things that kind of he's done and said, because remember, like, people, I think, have a weird misconception of mental illness, thinking that if somebody has paranoid schizophrenia, that it is persistent 24 hours, 7 hour or 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. That is not how mental illness works. You can absolutely slip out and in terms of any kind of condition that you're in, whether it's psychosis, whether it's schizophrenia. Like, you can have lucidity. I mean, clearly the concept that our healthcare system in this country sucks is true. It's true. It's absolutely true. However, as Alice and I have said basically on every live with regard to this case, we cannot turn into a country of savages that starts murdering people that are doing a job that they're paid to do, who have families. Can we point at him and say, you're a piece of shit for working for that corporation? Yes. Yes, we can. Can you then turn around and shoot him dead? No, you can't. Not in our country. We can't allow that to become the norm. There's a lot of things going on in a lot of cases where we cannot allow things that are happening to become the norm. Now, that being said, Katie Burr is not a lone voice screaming out into the ether. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of people that feel disenfranchised by this country, that feel that they don't have a voice, that there is nothing that can be done by means that don't involve violence, such as voting and elections and laws being passed. That exists in this country. We can't sit here and pretend for 1 minute that does not exist, as a portion of our population adamantly believes that. And there's probably a lot of truth in it. Like, I am no fan of politics. If you ever wonder why I don't talk about politics on our channel, it's because I think they're all full of shit. I really do. I don't care what side they're on. I think that they all have an end game, and I think that it's a bunch of muckety mucks just never getting anything accomplished. That's why I never talk about politics on my channel, and I never will. There's plenty of places where you guys can go and talk about politics. This ain't the spot. That being said, this is going to be a very political case, I think, as it progresses down the road. I think that it is going to the politics behind it are going to start carving itself out. You know what I'm saying? And I think that ultimately, at the end of the day, that civility in our country has to prevail. It has to prevail. We cannot live in a country. We are not going back to the Wild West, where I get to shoot somebody that I think that cheated in a hand of poker. We're not there. We're long past that. I'm big on using your words over here. And, I just, like, again, I understand the concept. All that to say that this very well may end, and I've said this on other lives, like jury nullification is not beyond the scope of reason here. Now, do I think that they'll be able to impanel 12 jurors that think that it's okay for private citizens to be gunned down based on what they do for a living? No, I don't. I don't think that's going to happen. Do I think that 1, 2, 3 jurors can slip through and cause this thing to go the way of a mistrial because they are just going to not apply the law because of a bigger purpose in their mind? And it's like you can smell a case coming in where it's really kind of got its finger on the pulse of bigger issues. In this case is that case. It's one of those cases where there's bigger issues at play, which those bigger issues, depending on which way you fall on those issues and how we can rectify the issues, could lead to a situation where you're going to get jurors that are going to be dug into their position, wherein they are going to not follow the law. And we certainly, and going into a trial, we know about cases like that. And you're always sitting there as the attorneys asking the questions during voir dire, whether or not, despite whatever their beliefs are, you have to check those at the door. And that means that you have to follow the law, even though if following the law means that you have to do something that goes against every fiber of your belief system. That's why it's always a thing in death penalty cases. That's why you will see heavy duty death penalty specific voir dire taking place in those cases, because if you get a person on that juror in a state where ultimately it is the jury as opposed to a judge or a panel of judges that makes the decision as to the sentence of death or not, or whether or not that person should be eligible for death, you've got to really tap into that conversation with your potential jurors to figure out, if that is something that fundamentally a person is so opposed to in terms of the death penalty that they're not willing to do it. So I don't know. It's a really tragic case. It's a really interesting case. And I mean, it's one that we're going to be following pretty heavily, and I just think that ultimately at the end of the day, we're going to have to really deal with the concept of whether or not Luigi Mangione has some mental illness going on, because then it becomes one of the cases that I so very much enjoy covering. And I say that in a purely educational sense. I mean, obviously, I'm not deriving joy out of cases where people have lost their lives, but from a strictly law nerd perspective, from the perspective of just talking about the difficulty of employing mental defect defenses in this country. Was it really J-Bo? Keys? Oof. You have impeccable taste, so that doesn't surprise me at all. So I just think that it's going to be a really interesting case, and I think that he's hired a very, very good attorney. She's been on both sides of the aisle. She's prosecuted. She's a defense attorney. She's in a high-powered defense attorney husband-wife team. I believe that her husband is one of Diddy's attorneys, and they're defense attorneys through and through, and they like, I read something that they're taking all kinds of shit, from the people that just are the torch and pitchfork crew that just believe in this country that we don't need to have trials and we don't need to have fair trials and that due process doesn't matter. And, those people, if they're not my people, because that's not what I believe. You guys, if you watch this channel, you know I am adamant about the Constitution. I am adamant about fair trials. I am adamant about every defendant having due process under the law. And no one is ever convincing me otherwise. And it's that simple. I don't give a shit if people are angry with me about it, because at the end of the day, once again, another end of the day, they're wrong. There is no argument to it. It's not optional. It's how we chose to live in this country by writing that document and deciding that it was going to be the rule of law and it was going to be the law of the land. And once that happened, that's it. It's in stone. There's no argument to be made. No argument to be made. I've had the conversation. Just because we as a society value the rule of law and we value fair trials and due process does not mean in any way, shape, or form that we do not want justice for victims. That concept is so repugnant to me. It's so shallow-minded that I feel like typically I can't even have a conversation with that person because they just can't see the forest through the trees. They're myopic. So that being said, I think this is going to be a really, really interesting trial to follow. And we're going to keep digging into it. And I can't wait to see how this thing is going to go. And I think that ultimately at the end of the day, we are like, it's just my guess, obviously, but I just like it smells like Luigi had some mental health issues going on to me. You know, typically when somebody kind of holes up or falls out, and not just with his folks, but his people, all of his people, you know, you have to be concerned about that. You have to be concerned about what's going on with him the couple months prior to, you know, and I think that, you know, they have the money, them being the family, because I have to assume, unless Luigi had a trust fund he could tap into, that his family ponied up the dough. You know, I think that I think it was becoming evident to his family, and I think that this will come out. And again, this is just all speculation on my part, but I think I've read, you know, and kind of that comment that Allison made, that the mother said that, you know, something to the effect that she wouldn't put it past him to have done this. You know, that speaks volumes about where the family's mindset was with respect to whatever his current mental state was. And we don't know anything about Luigi. None of us do. You know, we know what we've read in papers and seen on news reports, and, you know, some of the independent journalists who have done great work. You know, we've been able to tap a little bit into what might have been going on in his mind, but just understand this: we don't know jack shit about him. Just understand that, you know, and I say that as a longtime criminal defense attorney, where, you know, I always like debating with prosecutors because they're in that position where they never talk to defendants. They have no fucking idea what's going on with defendants. You know, it's like that's part of the job of being a defense attorney, is to enlighten prosecutors. Okay, well, this is a real human being, and this is the shit that was going on with that real human being when they committed this horrible crime. So let's look at it and let's try to figure out what the proper approach is here. You know, because if you're somebody who's suffering from mental illness, and I don't know if any of you in this chat have ever met or known somebody, whether it be a friend, whether it be a family member that suffers or has suffered from schizophrenic paranoia. But I am here to tell you that for those people that suffer from that unfortunate mental illness, whatever they are imagining is vivid as shit. It is as real as the nose on your face for that person in their mind. And that's facts. That's why I'm always fascinated by insanity defense or mental defect defenses, because it is the hardest sell. I mean, defense attorneys call it the defense of last resort for a reason, because it is nearly impossible to convince 12 people on a jury if the defendant has committed a horrific act wherein someone else lost their life, to get 12 people to understand that there is a reality that exists on this planet with human beings and their minds, wherein they're incapable of being able to differentiate the truth from whatever truth their mind is telling them is the truth. I mean, it's just like it's such a monumental task. You rarely see it. You rarely see it succeed, even though I would argue, as giant of a piece of shit of a human being John Wayne Gacy was, you're not being intellectually honest if you're not going to admit that that guy was broken mentally in a way that the rest of us aren't. I highly, even if you don't want to invest the hours and hours, which would be time well spent listening to my first season of my podcast, the Gacy tapes, it's worth just going to episode 32 or 33 and just listening to my father's opening statement regarding the insanity defense and regarding mental health. It's one of the most epic things I've ever heard anybody say with regard to mental health. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And he's always like, Bob, I just want to remind you, none of that was written. It's mind blowing. It's really fabulous, and it's fabulous in a way that it articulates the intensely difficult process of trying to get jurors to buy into that concept that person that you're sitting in judgment of, I cannot hold responsible for that crime because of their mental state, because of their diseased mind. It's just a really hard place to get people to get to, because we are a very much an eye for an eye country. It's like we want people to pay. But in this world that we live in, is it fair to blame people if their minds don't allow them to understand their actions? It's like, yeah, so at any rate, which kind of gets me into, I think we're going to this afternoon. I'm hoping to yes, I am going to Delphi for sentencing 100%. I will be there, even though that's a foregone conclusion in terms of what she's going to sentence. And as I told you yesterday, she will be dismissing the 2 felony murder. I mean, she can't sentence him on it'll be duplicative. So, he's going to get sentenced on, both murder counts, and she's going to give him the max. I mean, it's like no one's going to be surprised with what she does there. So, the real battle is taking place in the trenches right now as we speak. And as a matter of fact, one of the soldiers in that battle happens to be in our chat today. So, but this afternoon I want to come back. We are going to dig into the Lindsay Clancy case. Now, Allie 90211, I don't know, did somebody say that? Did Dizzy give a little, did Dizzy or Mandy give a little primer? So yeah, well, that's what we're going to dig into. Dizzy is feverishly working at putting together the material. I was not familiar with the case, but as soon as Dizzy and Tracy told me what it was about, I'm like, I'm in. It sounds like another horrific, tragic case, but it's got the element that I was just speaking of that I think is so important to talk about. Not only fascinating, I think that it's important to talk about. I want to talk it out with y'all. Like, I want to hear from people that think that mental illness is bullshit. I want to hear from people that think that no matter what your mental state is, no matter what diseased state your mind is in, that you should be held responsible for all your actions. Because that's ultimately what the question becomes in these cases where a mental defect offense is employed. So that's where, like, I haven't landed on what time we're going to do it. I was very happy with our numbers today. We had a nice crowd in here. Thank you to my mods. Jay, it's always wonderful to see you. I miss you desperately. Mods, I love and adore you. And thank you to Dizzy, Tracy, and Mandy, my behind the scenes team who does all the hard work. Thank you guys for putting it together. So keep an eye out, set your notifications. We are going to come back. And I have not forgotten, I'm going to also be setting up a members only, non-crime related, members only live tonight. It's going to be Scarlett and I. She's going to sit. We're going to play. I want to play my Mark Twain, Samuel Clemens Christmas episode that I did a couple of years ago, which I love because I love Mark Twain. And I want it to be a little Q&A. I think it's a great way to lead into Christmas. I think it's a great way to lead into the holidays. I think it's a good way to get you into the spirit. And it's going to be the first time I've let Scarlett, because she no longer believes in Santa, which crushed my heart last year. Everybody's like, Bob, she's 12. Like, do you really think she's still? I'm like, yeah, she still believes in Santa. I'm like, what? I'm like, why are you? So like, I spend a lot of time. There's about 7 minutes where I try to acknowledge, that there's a lot of people out there that the holidays are not a joyous occasion, that they actually cause people to feel exceptionally depressed. And, so I go through a lot of stuff kind of like in the preface of it, with the hopes that no matter what the situation is for each individual out there, and I say it all the time, life is brutal. Life is gut punch after gut punch, and that's facts. And, I was hoping just to give, even if but for a minute or two, a little bit of a smile. So I think you guys will enjoy it, and we'll have Scout with me. And that was her first performance on the podcast, and I thought she crushed it. So I hope that you guys will come hang with that. Keep your eye out for, it's going to be members only and Patreon both. So to me, they're one and the same. And then keep your eyes out. So please, before you leave, I see we're losing numbers already because I'm rapping. Please make sure you like on the way out. It means so much to getting us up in the algorithm. Also, please make sure that you share and subscribe. It helps get us out. And another favor that I have for you guys, a fellow law tuber who I really, really enjoyed listening to, and his handle was Legal Vices. He's got his channel. He passed away suddenly over the weekend. He was battling heart issues. He died. But Jeff passed away, and kind of everybody in the LawTube community is feeling it. And we are actively trying to get his account at the behest of his son, as we feel that will be his legacy. It's one of the cool things about YouTube. Like, long after I'm dead, people will be able to come back to this channel if they so desire, and they'll be able to watch this content. It's very much how I feel about my podcast, which is different. Like my Gacy season, and ultimately when my soon to be completed Garcia season are done, those are going to be part of my legacy. People will be listening to my Gacy season long after I'm dead. So, but we were asking everybody if you just be kind enough to go over there. We're trying to get them to 100,000 subs. And I think we've gotten it up around 95. I think when he passed, he was at, either in the low 90s or right around the high 80s. Go over there and give him a sub. It'll mean a lot to his family. And again, that's at Legal Vices is the channel. So, all right, you guys rock. You're the best. Oh, also, if you're on replay, throw a comment in the chat. That helps get it out there too. It's like none of us really know how that algorithm thing works, but we think that when people chat in there, that helps get it out there to the world. All right, you guys are the best, because without you, I'm just an old man talking about a lot of cases. Talk to you this afternoon.